Alors, nous aurons Christophe Grudler.
So we'll have Christophe GRUDLER. I'd like to tell you that he won't have much time for us because he's an MEP who matters in the European Parliament. He has set up an informal group on nuclear energy, quite original and quite brave, because this was done at a time when it was not easy. This group is just picking up speed, and he's going to tell us what is the role of the European Parliament now, after winning the battle of taxonomy, to now win the battle of the market. So this is the questions that we asked him. So this is quite ambitious.
Thank you very much, Christophe, for being here. This is not the very first time that you attend Les Entretiens Européens, and we like you, because you are very outspoken, and you are a fighter, and you are a strong believer in the future of technologies. And this is music to our ears. And you know that there is a lot of efforts that needs to be made, and you know that we will have to remedy the market failures. Together with others, you've fought an epic battle. I'm here talking about the taxonomy, but the taxonomy will only produce effect provided there are nuclear projects, provided the public companies and public authorities agree with private companies being involved in projects. This is far from being taken for granted. And this is what the UN representative said this morning. He said that we need to invent a public-private economy. We will need to do some further work on PPPs. And now that you've waged this first battle, what is your intention? What do you intend to do at the level of the European Parliament to bring about a reform of the market? I would like you to tell us about the emergency measures. Are they appropriate? What about, the perverse effect resulting from these emergency measures? What should one think about those emergency measures? And I will have a second question. Will it be possible to take nuclear out of competition by giving it a specific status? So these are the questions that I throw at you.
Thank you very much, Claude. Now, to answer your question, of course, I could have a 2-hour conference. To be very practical, thank you very much. I'm glad to attend this 20th edition. I'm quite sorry for being on time. Indeed, I'm under time constraint, which is why I really wanted to speak now. But I have to speak in Rome. The plane will be waiting for me, but I can't stay very long with you, and I really, really deplore it. But let's not forget that the measures taken by the European Commission to counter the energy price crisis are short-term measures. I think that this is very important. It's a point that needs to be mentioned. These are emergency measures to help companies, if possible, but also households, pay their electricity bills, because we know that when people are unhappy, this could be very damaging in politics. So Europe must act as one, must be united and avoid creating islands that would make the internal market more fragile. So we need to react together. Now, capping prices and the other measures that have been taken for the short term are clearly not long-term measures. This is just a set of emergency solutions. But of course, we will need to think about the long-term solutions as well. And so far, we haven't seen much of those. The Commission is working on new common rules that would allow for an operational market while allowing this famous sustainable energy transition. And this always brings us back to nuclear power. The Green Deal and zero carbon is our objective, our target for 2050. That's really a long term. But in the 2019 plans of the European Commission, we have 15% nuclear power in the mix if we want to be carbon-free by 2050. So to move further, we need to have a market that will operate without being dependent on gas or another fossil fuel. And on a personal note, as an MEP, I am very much in favor of a reform of the electricity market that would decouple the prices. I thought about the revenue that could be generated by renewables based on a very high gas price. But clearly, if we want this to work, First, we'll have to have electricity on the one hand. We'll need a gas market, a hydrogen market. The gas market will be decreasing in future. So we're working on this. And I heard Ursula von der Leyen in September. She was telling us that this electricity market would be reformed. So this decoupling is already in the books. But the question is, what is the deadline? Because, of course, that's not the kind of issue that you can settle overnight. The current market is operating as we've imagined it earlier, but there's no surprise there. I mean, we now need to imagine something new and design something new that will satisfy and meet the needs of all Europeans, households and industry alike, because I'm one of those who believe that the energy consumption is revealing of the wealth of a country, but also the growth of a country, and it's a shared wealth. So let's make sure we don't stop consuming energy. This would be good for no one.
Alors, donc tu l'as dit, les mesures sont.
Very well. As you said, these are short-term measures. Unfortunately, we will not have time to comment them all because some might contradict the long-term solution, I guess. They might be contradictory in the long term, but do you think that the Commission did sufficiently take on board the national differences and the deep inequalities? Now we'll get back to the market later on, but do you think that the Commission took on board the deep inequalities existing between the rich and the poor, between different countries? Could we have the same measures for everyone? And don't you have the impression that these measures are somehow directed at saving Germany? And could solidarity work in that direction only? Of course, Germany has a strong responsibility in the crisis that we know, because Germany imposed a model that does not work out. And, of course, Germany paid it dearly, and so did we. But now, of course, Germany has to be saved because it's the first industrial country of Europe. But we have the feeling that these measures supported by Mrs. von der Leyen are the ones suggested by Germany. Is this an exaggeration, or don't you think that we should restore a proper balance and have more solidarity in Europe so as to have a united Europe? A solidarity pact might be valid for the 27 member states, or maybe with the most advanced. How could we respect their different level of progress or wealth? Well, what you're saying may be exaggerated, but there's always some truth in any exaggeration. But I find that fairly funny. I talked about solidarity about the countries, between the countries. I couldn't really bash some of them. So the crisis showed, of course, the perverse effects of our solutions, because we found solutions without taking on board the different mix in the countries. Indeed, the member states are competent when it comes to energy. Europe can set the global objectives, but the member states are responsible for the resources, the means they will use to reach those targets. Now, the temptation for some states is to impose their energy choice on the others, or to impose them full stop. And we've talked about low-carbon hydrogen. This was mentioned this morning, and I could comment that. So low-carbon hydrogen, nuclear power, taxonomy, which was not, it's not over. I mean, a week ago, taxonomy was almost put on the table again. Fortunately, the URI committee, the Commission, decided to put in a minority those who wanted to challenge this text again, but we remain very careful there. So there's a great deal of debate about nuclear power at European level. We always repeat that member states are sovereign member states. I don't mind Austria deciding not to use nuclear energy, provided France can do it, provided the Eastern European countries willing to exit from coal are also left to use nuclear power. I would like to remind you, if we have a Euratom treaty, this is a European treaty, which is really not a minor text. I mean, it says that every member state is free to choose whether or not to use nuclear energy or not. And so they can, in fact, contribute to the development of a powerful nuclear sector in Europe. So, indeed, the European Parliament is making sure treaties are respected. And in full respect of the Euratom Treaty, I decided to create, last December, an intergroup meeting, which is called a think tank about the future of nuclear energy, an informal group on nuclear energy. Now, the name of our group is Marie Curie. I know that this is something that will speak to you. So this is the theme, the overarching theme of our group. Now we have 95 MEPs coming from the various political groups of the European Parliament. And today the anti-nuclear are no longer in a majority at the European Parliament. But of course, don't come posting your opinions and say I'm pro-nuclear, are you? This won't work, this won't fly. But if you're a bit sensitive and, well, sometimes if you don't mention the word nuclear, don't say my name, I mean, usually it is quite positive and favorable. So this is something that we are working on with this informal group. We have 15 countries represented, and we send a letter on low-carbon hydrogen to the Commission leader, Mrs. von der Leyen. I have Poles, Czechs, Bulgarians, 12 countries, and Germans signing that text. 2 Germans from the EPP group and from Renew signed my letter. So we shouldn't see it as something that works only per political family, but together we can actually have our ideas progress. This is how we can achieve it if we are educational when others are a bit too dogmatic. Quite. But when you were talking about Euratom, when Austria does not respect the treaty itself, and when we were working on taxonomy, our people said that it was a nightmare. I mean, what about Austria? Shouldn't it be brought before the Court of Justice? I mean, the member states have to respect the treaties as well, including if they don't agree with certain choices. I mean, they make their own choices, but they should respect other states' choices. I always thought that Austria should be prosecuted if they don't respect the treaties. I mean, France has not acted sufficiently in the eyes of the Court of Justice and was brought to court. So fine, why not? I mean, we're not afraid of that. So why not bring Austria to court if they don't respect the treaty? Now, to answer your other question about the solidarity pact between the countries, this is something that should be developed further, and it's part of the Euratom Treaty, by the way. Euratom allows for country corporations, and this is valid for some countries and not all. The only element is that European money cannot be invested on top of the national money. This is quite logical. I mean, if countries make the choice of no nuclear power, of course, they should not be forced to finance a nuclear project. So this is something that could work on the partnership basis without needing the unanimity of member states. So that's really an important point. So I'm working with my colleagues. You were talking about SMRs earlier on. I really want the Commission to launch the European Alliance for SMRs in 2023. We were talking about partnership, but to me, this should be an alliance, and we should find the way to organize. There are French projects on SMRs. There are some in Italy, in the Netherlands, in the Czech Republic. Everywhere, people are mobilizing. So in the name of this spirit, of this solidarity pact, as you call it, countries that are more advanced should be able to progress further without having a unanimous approval by the other countries. That's another idea. There will be enhanced cooperations on certain nuclear projects, such as SMRs, and this is progressing. And if we take too much time, well, the Americans will be there sooner than later, and all that will be left to do is to cry. So let's move on. Okay, it's moving very fast. No solidarity. I mean, enhanced cooperation is not exactly the same idea. We'll have time to look into that. We'll discuss it further. But it's an idea that we've been defending for 15 years with Philippe, this Solidarity Pact. And we had made very concrete proposals. We were talking about an energy pact, and we are somehow reducing the focus to an energy solidarity pact. Okay, we decided to mitigate our plan because a step-by-step approach is important, especially when a fight is so difficult to fight. We'll have another roundtable on this. I see that Nicolas has arrived. Hello. Today's states have projects, and we know they will have to be financed. We are in a very serious crisis, and Philippe explained it very clearly from a macroeconomic point of view. We may not have pockets as deep as we expected, so it's going to be difficult to finance it. And how can we mobilize public and private partners and stakeholders? Of course, DG Comp has to control that. They accepted Hungary, they accepted other projects, but it's expensive and it takes time. So wouldn't it be possible to move towards a market that would avoid the need to ask for DG Comp's authorization, for instance? So there is this idea of European licenses, but also the idea of nuclear power to be recognized as a common good, and well, for nuclear power to receive this status. It is possible in the treaty. It hasn't been used by the member states. So why not relaunch this idea? This is the last question. Well, of course, this is part of the Treaty on the Functioning of the European Union. But of course, it's up to the member states to look into that. And we may ask France, more globally, the difficulty to mobilize funds for nuclear power, apart from the state aid directive at the moment, which allows the states or allows for the possibility to approve state aid for nuclear energy. I mean, taxonomy is private funds, of course, and the state aid directive is public funds. So these are the two existing possibilities to finance nuclear projects. I think that mobilizing private funds can be extremely important. So this taxonomy is not a side project, in my view. It is a major one, provided we use it fully. If bankers say, as German citizens or French citizens, do you want to support nuclear energy? Well, then fine, invest your money in that. Are you a pension fund, a small company? You want to invest in nuclear energy? Go for it. So this is extremely important. We were talking about DG Comp. It's very important to insist on the fact that they must be resourced better. I think that we agree on this. I've had the opportunity to speak out, you know me. In 2020, Mrs. Simpson and Mr. Breton announced the European Alliance of Clean Hydrogen. This was July 2020. They said we're going to speed up the development of hydrogen and low-carbon hydrogen. In July 2020, we are moving full speed. We are in October 2022, and that's it. I mean, basically, there are still projects to be notified in the hydrogen sector. It took more than 3 years to have the right staff mobilized to answer member states and confirm that, yes, this project is approved and this one is not. Frans Timmermans, the president, talked about more resources, but if we want to move faster, then we must help the Commission. We must resource the Commission so it could give its opinion faster. I'm sorry, your assistant is making signs, so you'll have to leave us. Too bad for the questions. You can always, my office is always open. My door is always open, but it's not the same thing. Send me a message, send me a question. There's absolutely no problem. Thank you very much, and I'd like to wish you a very good anniversary for these 20 years. I congratulate you for these 20 years.